Hello, everyone. Welcome to week 5. We're starting a new unit on short stories or short fiction. Um, I'm impressed with all the work you did in poetry, so I hope you enjoyed that. I'm looking forward to commenting on your poetry installations. And this week, we're moving on to our new topic. So I think short stories are a great way to get into fiction because they're short, and meaning you can read one in one sitting, and we'll be able to read over the next few weeks several different authors, right? And see different styles, different types of stories. And then ultimately in this unit, you're going to find a current short story of your own from a current literary magazine to read and respond to. So you can look forward to that. This week, we're starting with a story called Cathedral. I'm just going to scroll down here on my screen for a second here. I'll actually store here. So we're starting with Raymond Carver's Cathedral. Raymond Carver was an American fiction writer who died very unfortunately at the young age of 50 years old. He was considered the best American short story writer of his time. And we're reading his story, Cathedral. What I'm asking you to do is a little bit different than what we've done before, but I'm asking you to, as you read the story, notice, right, Carver's style of writing. And at the end of the story, you're going to write a new paragraph that would go at the end of the story. There's 3 characters in the story. There's the narrator, there's his wife, and there's his wife's friend who's been invited over to visit their house. And so you're going to write a scene the next morning after the end of the current story and write a paragraph about what happens. What do they say to each other? What do they do? Are the conflicts among them resolved or not? And how you get to decide. But you have to make something like, don't have them abducted by aliens or something at the end of the story, something that logically flows, okay, for you from what we already have of the story. And then after that, you're just going to write 3 to 5 sentences about what choices did you make? Like, did you mimic some of his language in part of your writing? Did you decide a character would say something based on things you saw prior in the story? Things like that. Then you're going to respond to 2 other people's posts. It should be fun to see how people chose to write their paragraphs. And you're going to notice, where did you see them mimicking Carver's style? What did you admire about what they wrote in their new ending? And did anything surprise you right in the ending? And surprise can be a good thing, right? Sometimes in writing. Okay, so that's the goal. That's what we're aiming for this week. And then I have just a few key terms to get us kick started with short stories. So the setting is where the story takes place. And in a short story, we may or may not know what country, state, or city they're in. We might, but it depends on the story. Sometimes we only know they're in a kitchen or they're in a kind of a generic American office, right? Something like that. But it will take place, it won't take place in a vacuum. It'll take place in some actual setting, right? With things around it. Like in my office here, I've got books, on the wall. I've got a computer monitor in the background, a window to the side. This is the setting, right? A specific setting. Point of view is who is telling the story, and it could be a first person narrator. So that means I. Cathedral that we're reading this week is from a first person perspective. So the husband is telling the story. It's from his perspective or point of view. So imagine if the wife were telling the story or the friend who is visiting would tell the story, it would be a different story, right? Because they'd be focused on different things, they'd have different feelings about what was happening, etc. You can also have a second person narration, which is you. So as you got up at midnight, you wondered where the cat was, right, etc. So it's kind of putting the reader, the you, into the place of the character. And then finally, we can have a third person narrator, like she woke up at midnight or he woke up at midnight. And in the third person narration, it can be limited, meaning if the main character is Cheryl, we might get only Cheryl's thoughts and feelings. So Cheryl walked down the street, she thought about how Bradley had broken up with her, right, etc. Or it might be omniscient, third person omniscient, meaning we would get a little bit of what Cheryl's thinking, some of what Bradley's thinking, some of what Bradley's best friend is thinking, whatever. We can get into different people's minds. That's the difference between the 2 third person points of view. Conflict is essential to short stories. A short story in which nothing happens isn't a story. If you think about the movies and the TV shows that you love, stuff happens, right? You think about Grey's Anatomy is the first thing that comes to my mind. They have interpersonal conflicts with each other, who's dating whom, who's right breaking up with whom. Plus, they have all the drama of can they save this patient's life, right? So there's constantly problems and conflicts that they have to deal with. That is what makes a story or show entertaining, right? So you have to have conflict. Can't be nothing happens. No one will watch that show or read that story. So the conflicts can range from, as in Cathedral that we're going to read for this week, the main character is jealous because his wife has invited a male friend over to stay at their house. Kind of understandable, right? He might be a little concerned about this. It could be something more serious, like someone's losing their job, or maybe someone who was driving a car and had an accident, actually killed someone that they loved who was in the car with them, right? They have a lot that they have to deal with from that. So in short stories, the conflict is often interpersonal, so meaning it's character driven. So it's not a snowstorm and the person can't escape, but it's that the person was irresponsible and drove into the snowstorm when they knew better, right? They should have stayed home and their partner is in the passenger seat reaming them out, right? Something like that. So the conflict between or among two or more characters. And the plot essentially follows the arc of the conflict. So the characters usually keep trying to resolve the conflict, fail, try again, fail, try again. And this happens sort of as long as the story goes on until it's ultimately resolved in a good or a bad way. So, for example, if a character is trying to convince his boss not to fire him, he might try several different tactics, right, within the same meeting. First, saying it's not my fault, it's Joe's fault, right? Blaming a coworker. Then maybe saying apologize and say, you know what, I'm right. I shouldn't have done this or I should have done that. If that doesn't work, it might move to plan C, which might be threatening to reveal the boss's secret, right? If he doesn't get to keep his job. And again, these things may or may not work. If it works and the conflicts resolve right away, you don't really have a story. So usually it's at least several attempts, right, to resolve the story. And it may not resolve the way the character wants it to. Finally, the last keyword I wanted to mention this week is scene. And scene is really important because it's how stories are built, just like how movies or TV shows are built in blocks called scenes. So just like in a movie or TV show, the scene is when we're watching the characters go moment by moment through a conflict. Okay. It's not a summary. So a summary would be, I got fired today. That's not a scene. We can't see it. We can't hear what was said. We don't know what the person was feeling. We just know the outcome, right? We're just getting the summary. So the example that I gave in here is a scene. It has to be in a specific setting, doesn't take place in a vacuum. There's a conflict present, usually among two or more characters, and there's a ticking clock. So we're aware that time is of the essence. So think about like in TV shows, they know a bomb's going to go off in 10 minutes, right? So that's a scene as they're running around trying to find the bomb or defuse the bomb or whatever they're doing. So the scene example I gave here is that if the character was called into a meeting with his boss before lunch and he knew he had like 10 minutes to convince the boss to let him keep his job, we would see, feel how hot it is in the office. We would hear the chair squeaking underneath the character. We would see the boss rolling his eyes, right, as the character made his excuses, right? So all those things would be unfolding, right, as the scene unfolds. Okay, so down here you'll find there's a picture of Raymond Carver, and then there's the link to Cathedral. So have fun this week. So as you're reading the story, be thinking about what do you want to do in your new paragraph at the end of the story? And I look forward to reading them. Thanks, everyone.